Welcome to another gentle journey into the quiet corners of soccer's past. Tonight, we will follow the soft, rolling path of the soccer ball itself. Not the players, not the goals, not the trophies, but the ball, the heart of the game, the object that carries the dream. From ancient China to medieval England, from stitched leather to lace and rubber, from the heavy balls of early World Cups to the polished designs of today, each ball has a story. Each one rolled across muddy ground, across packed dirt, across manicured grass. Each one forgotten by most. This is the sleepy history of the soccer ball. So, close your eyes if you wish, settle into stillness, and let the ball roll slowly through time. Long before soccer was called soccer, long before football had rules, there were balls. In China, more than 2,000 years ago, there was kuju. The word means kick ball. The ball was made of stitched leather, filled with feathers or animal hair. Sometimes it was light, sometimes heavy, always uneven. Imagine a soldier in a quiet courtyard, gently juggling the ball with his feet, his knees, his thighs. The sound is soft, leather brushing against cloth. A circle of friends passes the ball slowly toward a small net suspended on wooden poles. Elsewhere, in ancient Greece, there was episkouros, a ball made of inflated pig bladder wrapped in stitched leather. Players pushed and kicked it across sandy ground. The game was rougher, more chaotic, but the ball remained at its center. Across the ocean, in Mesoamerica, rubber trees gave birth to something new. Balls made of solid rubber, heavy, bouncing, strange, played in stone courts under sun and shadow. Sometimes the game was sacred, sometimes a test of strength. Each of these balls was different. Feathers, bladders, rubber, but all carried the same rhythm, the sound of feet against leather, of people gathered around a rolling object, of joy and ritual. No cameras recorded them, no trophies were lifted, only memories drifting like smoke. And yet, without these early balls, there would be no soccer. Now, let us wander to medieval England. Here, the ball was simple, a pig's bladder, inflated by mouth, tied at the end, sometimes covered with leather. The stitching was rough, the shape uneven, the weight uncertain. On Shrove Tuesday, or during festivals, entire villages would gather, one side of the town against the other. The goal was simple: move the ball to a marker, a gate, a church door, a riverbank. The ball was kicked, carried, thrown, even hidden under cloaks. It rolled through mud, through streets, through fields. Windows shattered, carts toppled, shopkeepers locked their doors. Imagine the ball itself, scuffed, wet, carried for hours through chaos. Sometimes torn open, its bladder bursting, sometimes disappearing into rivers, never to be seen again. Kings banned the game, too disruptive, too wild. But people played anyway. The ball was heavy when wet, light when dry, sometimes too fragile to last the match. Yet it was enough. Enough to bring neighbors together, enough to spark rivalries, enough to make the first whispers of what would one day become football. The medieval ball was humble, forgotten, but it rolled stubbornly across centuries. By the 1800s, change was coming. Charles Goodyear discovered vulcanized rubber in 1839. Suddenly, balls could be stronger, rounder, longer lasting. In 1855, Goodyear made one of the first rubber soccer balls. It was bouncy, a little unpredictable, but revolutionary. Soon after, companies began producing balls with rubber bladders inside, covered with hand-stitched leather panels. To keep the bladder closed, they used a lace. The lace ran along one side of the ball. It made headers painful. Players sometimes wore caps to soften the blow, but it gave structure. It gave consistency. Imagine the smell of leather, the shine of polished panels, freshly oiled to resist water, the sound of boots striking against the ball, a dull, thudding echo. These were the balls used in the first FA Cup matches, in the first leagues of England and Scotland, in the earliest World Cups. The weight changed with weather. On rainy days, the ball grew heavy, waterlogged. On sunny afternoons, it floated lighter. Players had to adjust, reading the ball's mood, its rhythm. For decades, this laced leather ball was the standard. Simple, strong, imperfect. It carried the game from muddy public school grounds to massive crowds in growing cities. It rolled from England, across Europe, into South America. The industrial ball, with its rubber heart and leather skin, made soccer truly global. And now the ball becomes memory we can almost touch. In 1930, the first World Cup was played in Uruguay. 2 different balls were used in the final. Argentina brought their ball. Uruguay brought theirs. At halftime, they switched. Argentina's ball was lighter. Uruguay's heavier. Uruguay won. The ball decided as much as the players. In 1954, the Swiss World Champion ball was introduced. Still leather, still laced, but sleeker. By 1970, in Mexico, came the most iconic of all, the Adidas Telstar. Black and white panels, designed to stand out on black and white television screens. 32 stitched panels, the design we still imagine today when we close our eyes and picture a soccer ball. Each decade brought change. The Tango in 1978, the Azteca in 1986, the Jabulani in 2010, notorious for its strange flight. And yet, even as materials shifted to synthetics, even as stitching gave way to seamless gluing, the ball remained the same at heart. Round, waiting, ready to roll. Imagine now a single ball resting on grass. No crowd, no whistle, just silence. From feathers to bladders to lace to seamless polymers, the journey is long, but the purpose is the same: to be kicked, to be passed, to be played. And so, the forgotten balls of history keep rolling, even in memory. Quiet, steady, eternal. Thank you for joining this quiet journey through the forgotten balls of soccer, from ancient Cuju to the medieval bladder, from the laced leather of Victorian England to the smooth panels of today. Each ball tells a story of play, of people, of time. And tonight, as you drift to sleep, you may imagine the ball rolling softly across centuries, carrying you into rest. Good night, and may your dreams be peaceful. Welcome to another quiet chapter in the sleepy history of soccer. Tonight, we will not follow the players or the ball. Instead, we will follow the spaces, the grounds, the fields, the stadiums, from muddy village greens to wooden stands to the grand cathedrals of South America, and finally, to the modern arenas of glass and steel. Every game begins with a place, a patch of earth, a circle of people, and slowly, over time, those places grew. This is the story of where soccer lives. So, let your eyes close if they wish. Let your breathing slow, and let us wander together through the history of soccer stadiums. Before stadiums, before tickets, before gates and turnstiles, there was the open field. In medieval England, games of folk football were played in streets, in meadows, across rivers. There were no boundaries, no stands, no seats. The town itself was the stadium. A pig's bladder rolled across mud. Neighbors chased, pulled, shouted. Children climbed onto carts or fences to watch. Spectators stood wherever they pleased. In the early 1800s, when schools began to codify football, the fields were still simple, a patch of grass, sometimes marked by stones, sometimes by coats laid on the ground. At rugby school, at Eton, at Harrow, the pitches were uneven. Grass grew in tufts. Rain made the earth slick. Balls rolled unpredictably. There were no crowds, only classmates, only friends, only the occasional visitor leaning against a fence. The earliest clubs, like Sheffield FC, also played on ordinary ground. The air smelled of damp grass. The wind cut across open fields. There were no walls to keep the ball in, no ropes to keep the crowd out. The stadium did not exist. Only space, only earth, only the game itself. And yet, those quiet fields were enough. They were the soil in which soccer grew. As the 19th century moved forward, something changed. Cities grew. Factories hummed. Railways stretched across the land. And soccer, no longer a game only for schools or villages, began to draw crowds. In England and Scotland, by the 1870s and 1880s, hundreds came to watch. Then thousands, soon tens of thousands. At first, people stood along the touchline, shoulder to shoulder, children perched on railings, vendors wandered with paper cones of roasted chestnuts, but crowds grew restless. They needed order, they needed space. So came the wooden stands, simple bleachers, raised platforms, built quickly and cheaply. They smelled of pine and tar. They creaked beneath heavy boots. When it rained, they grew slippery. When the wind blew, they shuddered. Yet they gave shape. They gave structure. They allowed the game to be seen. In Glasgow, Hampden Park rose, the first of its kind. In England, Goodison Park became a model for purpose-built stadiums. Slowly, stadiums became permanent. Not all were safe. In some places, stands collapsed. Crowds spilled onto the pitch. Tragedies occurred, but lessons were learned. Stronger foundations were built. The wooden stand, plain and fragile, marked the first true step from village green to stadium. By the early 20th century, soccer had become a mass spectacle. In Europe, and especially in South America, stadiums were no longer just stands. They were cathedrals, places of gathering, structures of pride. In Montevideo, the Estadio Centenario was built in 1930 for the first World Cup. Concrete, tall, circular, a monument not only to soccer, but to a young nation's dreams. In Buenos Aires, La Bombonera rose. Its steep stands, its echoing walls became the heartbeat of Boca Juniors. The crowd pressed close, voices rolling like thunder. In Rio de Janeiro came the Maracanã for the 1950 World Cup. Built for 200,000 souls on match days, the sound was a living thing, a tide of noise, a roar that could shake the sky. In Europe, great stadiums also rose. Wembley, with its twin towers, San Siro in Milan, Camp Nou in Barcelona. Each became a symbol, each a landmark. But at their heart, these places were still simple. A field, white lines, 2 goals, grass beneath boots. The stadiums magnified the game, but did not change it. They held the crowd, the sound, the color. But the ball still rolled the same way. To walk into these cathedrals was to feel history gather, the air thick with memory, the stones humming with chants long past. The stadium had become more than shelter. It had become sacred ground. Today, the stadium has become something vast. Steel and glass, curving roofs, giant screens, seats colored in perfect patterns, lights flooding the pitch with artificial day. The Allianz Arena in Munich, glowing with shifting colors. The Bird's Nest in Beijing, the Lusail Stadium in Qatar. Each designed not only for games, but for television, for spectacle, for the global stage. Modern stadiums are comfortable, heated seats, food courts, retractable roofs, perfect grass, trimmed by machines. And yet, in the quiet moments, when the crowd is left, when the lights are dark, the stadium rests, silent, empty, waiting. Think of it now. A vast arena, no people, no noise, just wind moving softly across the pitch. A ball resting at the center circle. The memory of footsteps still lingering, from mud to wooden planks to marble and steel. The stadium has grown, but its purpose is unchanged: to hold the game, to frame the moment, to keep safe the rolling ball. The modern stadium may be vast, but in the stillness, it is the same as the village green, a place where people gather, a place where the game lives. And so, we have walked from muddy meadows to wooden bleachers, to the great cathedrals of concrete, to the shining arenas of today. Each stadium tells a story of crowds, of games, of joy, of sorrow. But when the people leave, when the lights fade, when the doors close, the stadium sleeps. And tonight, as you rest, you may drift into those empty spaces, those quiet stands, and hear only the soft sound of the ball rolling once, then rolling away. Good night. Welcome to another gentle journey into the quiet corners of soccer's past. Tonight, we will follow the soft, rolling path of the soccer ball itself. Not the players, not the goals, not the trophies, but the ball, the heart of the game, the object that carries the dream. From ancient China to medieval England, from stitched leather to lace and rubber, from the heavy balls of early World Cups to the polished designs of today, each ball has a story. Each one rolled across muddy ground, across packed dirt, across manicured grass. Each one forgotten by most. This is the sleepy history of the soccer ball. So, close your eyes if you wish, settle into stillness, and let the ball roll slowly through time. Long before soccer was called soccer, long before football had rules, there were balls. In China, more than 2,000 years ago, there was kuju. The word means kickball. The ball was made of stitched leather, filled with feathers or animal hair. Sometimes it was light, sometimes heavy, always uneven. Imagine a soldier in a quiet courtyard, gently juggling the ball with his feet, his knees, his thighs. The sound is soft, leather brushing against cloth. A circle of friends passes the ball slowly toward a small net suspended on wooden poles. Elsewhere, in ancient Greece, there was episkaros, a ball made of inflated pig bladder wrapped in stitched leather. Players pushed and kicked it across sandy ground. The game was rougher, more chaotic, but the ball remained at its center. Across the ocean, in Mesoamerica, rubber trees gave birth to something new. Balls made of solid rubber, heavy, bouncing, strange, played in stone courts under sun and shadow. Sometimes the game was sacred, sometimes a test of strength. Each of these balls was different. Feathers, bladders, rubber, but all carried the same rhythm, the sound of feet against leather, of people gathered around a rolling object, of joy and ritual. No cameras recorded them, no trophies were lifted, only memories drifting like smoke. And yet, without these early balls, there would be no soccer. Now, let us wander to medieval England. Here, the ball was simple, a pig's bladder, inflated by mouth, tied at the end, sometimes covered with leather. The stitching was rough, the shape uneven, the weight uncertain. On Shrove Tuesday, or during festivals, entire villages would gather, one side of the town against the other. The goal was simple: move the ball to a marker, a gate, a church door, a riverbank. The ball was kicked, carried, thrown, even hidden under cloaks. It rolled through mud, through streets, through fields. Windows shattered, carts toppled, shopkeepers locked their doors. Imagine the ball itself, scuffed, wet, carried for hours through chaos. Sometimes torn open, its bladder bursting, sometimes disappearing into rivers, never to be seen again. Kings banned the game. Too disruptive, too wild. But people played anyway. The ball was heavy when wet, light when dry. Sometimes too fragile to last the match. Yet it was enough. Enough to bring neighbors together. Enough to spark rivalries. Enough to make the first whispers of what would one day become football. The medieval ball was humble, forgotten, but it rolled stubbornly across centuries. By the 1800s, change was coming. Charles Goodyear discovered vulcanized rubber in 1839. Suddenly, balls could be stronger, rounder, longer lasting. In 1855, Goodyear made one of the first rubber soccer balls. It was bouncy, a little unpredictable, but revolutionary. Soon after, companies began producing balls with rubber bladders inside, covered with hand-stitched leather panels. To keep the bladder closed, they used a lace. The lace ran along one side of the ball. It made headers painful. Players sometimes wore caps to soften the blow, but it gave structure. It gave consistency. Imagine the smell of leather, the shine of polished panels, freshly oiled to resist water, the sound of boots striking against the ball, a dull, thudding echo. These were the balls used in the first FA Cup matches, in the first leagues of England and Scotland, in the earliest World Cups. The weight changed with weather. On rainy days, the ball grew heavy, waterlogged. On sunny afternoons, it floated lighter. Players had to adjust, reading the ball's mood, its rhythm. For decades, this laced leather ball was the standard. Simple, strong, imperfect. It carried the game from muddy public school grounds to massive crowds in growing cities. It rolled from England, across Europe, into South America. The industrial ball, with its rubber heart and leather skin, made soccer truly global. The rules no longer just words on paper, but a living system, still changing, still adapting, from chaos to Cambridge, to cards and cameras. The march has been long, slow, steady, sleepy. And so, we leave the field tonight, not with goals or glory, but with rules, the quiet lines drawn across grass, the whistle's call, the boundaries that hold the game together. Soccer is not only the joy of play, but the calm of order, the balance between freedom and rule, between chaos and quiet. As you drift into rest, may you imagine the field at night, white lines faint in the moonlight, a ball resting on the spot, a whistle waiting to begin again. Good night. Welcome to another quiet chapter in the sleepy history of soccer. Tonight, we will not speak of famous names or shining stars. Instead, we will wander into forgotten corners, into the shadows, where the first soccer clubs once stood. Most are gone now, their grounds erased, their players unknown, their names barely whispered. But without them, there would be no game today. So tonight, we will remember the forgotten, the first clubs nobody remembers. Rest back, breathe slowly, and let the past unfold. Our journey begins in Sheffield, England. In 1857, two men, Nathaniel Creswick and William Prest, formed a club, simply called Sheffield Football Club. They were cricketers seeking winter exercise. They played with friends on uneven ground, in simple clothes. They drafted rules of their own, known as the Sheffield Rules. These rules allowed corner kicks, throw-ins, crossbars. Many ideas later adopted worldwide, yet Sheffield FC never became a giant. Larger clubs soon overshadowed them. The city's steelworks grew. Other teams drew more crowds. Still, Sheffield FC remains the oldest club still existing, a living relic, a quiet stone in soccer's foundation. Few speak their names now, Creswick, Prest, ordinary men, yet their small club lit a spark. Around them, other small groups formed, Hallam FC, Healy, Norfolk, clubs forgotten, yet once alive with shouts and cheers. Imagine the sound, a ball rolling on rough grass, voices calling in the cold, rules written on scraps of paper, forgotten foundations, still holding the weight of the game today. In London, in the 1860s and 1870s, clubs began to appear. One was the Wanderers, a team of gentlemen. They won the first FA Cup in 1872. They played with grace and honor, but they had no fixed ground. They wandered, as their name suggested. Within 2 decades, they were gone. Another was the Royal Engineers, soldiers, disciplined, organized. They introduced teamwork, passing, strategy. They reached the first FA Cup final. For a time, they were admired. But like the Wanderers, they faded. These early clubs were not professional. They were amateur. Gentlemen, soldiers, students. They played for exercise, for pride, for pastime. Few photographs remain, a handful of names, a record of a cup here, a match there, then silence. The Wanderers, the Engineers, forgotten by most. Yet they shaped the sport. They introduced passing. They lifted the first trophies. The game we know carries their fingerprints, though their names are faint. While England built clubs of gentlemen, Scotland brought something new. In the 1860s and 1870s, small clubs in Glasgow and Edinburgh formed. Queen's Park was among the first. They favored passing, not dribbling, a collective style, a flowing rhythm. This Scottish style spread quickly. It changed the game, no longer one man against many, but many working as one. Other clubs sprang up. Third Lanark, Vale of Leven, Dumbarton, names now mostly lost, their grounds long gone. But in their time, they filled the air with energy. Crowds gathered at modest fields. Men in flat caps watched intently. Players wore thick wool shirts, heavy boots. Balls grew waterlogged in rain. These Scottish pioneers brought beauty to the game. Yet many clubs fell. Financial troubles, industrial decline, larger clubs rising. Their names remain only in old fixtures, yellowed newspapers, fading plaques. But their passing game, their quiet gift, still breathes in every match today. As soccer spread beyond Britain, new clubs appeared. In Switzerland, in the 1860s, Lausanne Football Club. In Denmark, Schopenhauen's Bold Club. In Germany, Dresden English FC. Many were founded by expatriates, small circles of friends, far from home. In France, Le Havre AC, a club of students and sailors. They played in borrowed fields beside the harbor. Few records remain of their first years. In Spain, early clubs formed in Huelva, Bilbao, Barcelona. Some grew into giants. Others disappeared without a trace. Across South America, British workers brought the game. Tiny railway clubs, factory teams, port workers playing near docks. Some clubs survived, becoming legends. Others vanished. These were not yet professional giants. They were fragile, dependent on local support, on passion, on survival. Many crumbled, their names lost to time. But together, They carried the game outward, across seas, across continents, planting seeds. Every forgotten club is a root beneath the tree of soccer, invisible but essential. Without them, the game would not stand. And so, we leave the forgotten clubs. Sheffield, still alive. Wanderers, long gone. The Engineers, remembered by few. Queen's Park, still holding on. And countless others, whose names we will never know. They were small. They were fragile. They were forgotten. But they mattered. Every game today owes a debt to the first clubs, to men playing in fields, to students in wool shirts, to soldiers, sailors, workers, to those who vanished. As you drift tonight, imagine a lonely pitch, grass long, lines faint. A small group gathers. A ball is placed. A whistle sounds. A game begins, long forgotten, yet still echoing softly in the quiet of history. Good night. They were forgotten, but they mattered. Every game today owes a debt to the first clubs, to men playing in fields, to students in wool shirts, to soldiers, sailors, workers, to those who vanished. As you drift tonight, imagine a lonely pitch, grass long, lines faint. A small group gathers, a ball is placed, a whistle sounds, a game begins, long forgotten, yet still echoing softly in the quiet of history. Good night. Fade with soft crowd ambience, distant, indistinct, like a memory. Would you like me to now write episode 7, when soccer slept, forgotten tournaments, and lost cups, as the next full sleepy script? Welcome to another soft journey into the sleepy corners of soccer's past. Tonight, we will not watch famous finals. We will not hold the shining World Cup. Instead, we will wander among the forgotten, the early tournaments, the lost cups, competitions once filled with cheers and hopes, now barely remembered. We will move slowly through school cups, through workers' trophies, through regional tournaments, and through cups that simply faded away. They may be forgotten, but once they mattered deeply. So breathe gently, let your body rest, and let us drift into the tournaments where soccer once lived and then slept. In the earliest days, soccer lived in schools, Eton, Harrow, Rugby, matches played on muddy fields among classmates. But soon, competition began. Cups, prizes, a silver vessel awarded to a team of boys who triumphed over rivals. The Udan Cup of 1867 in Sheffield was among the very first open competitions. Just 12 teams entered. Hallam FC defeated Norfolk FC and claimed a trophy that today rests in glass. Another early cup, the Cromwell Cup in 1868, small in scale, forgotten by most, but at the time, the pride of young men. Imagine it slowly. A chilly afternoon, players in thick shirts, the ball heavy with damp, a handful of spectators, And yet, a sense of history beginning. These cups were small, yet they marked the shift from casual games to organized competition. Though most are forgotten, their echoes remain. Every modern tournament rests upon these early prizes. In 1871, the Football Association in England created its own cup, the FA Cup. It became the oldest national competition in the world, still alive today. But as the FA Cup grew, other competitions faded. Local cups, regional tournaments, slowly withered. The Sheffield Challenge Cup, once fierce, now forgotten. The Birmingham Senior Cup, once prestigious, now quiet. The FA Cup drew attention. It grew each year, larger crowds, wider fame, and so the smaller cups became shadows. Imagine the feelings then. A village team once proud of its local trophy, now overshadowed by London clubs, by national headlines, by great finals at Kennington Oval, and later Wembley. The FA Cup survived, but countless cups it replaced have been forgotten. Yet once, they mattered. Once, they were held aloft in muddy fields. Once, they brought joy. Beyond England, soccer spread, and so did cups. In Scotland, the Glasgow Merchants Charity Cup. Crowds filled early grounds. The trophy gleamed. Today, few remember it. In Ireland, the Belfast Charity Cup. Long gone. In Wales, the South Wales Cup. Now a memory. In France, the People's Cup. In Italy, the Medaglia del Re. In Spain, the Copa Macaya, the first Catalan championship. These were not yet great leagues, but small steps. Quiet beginnings. Across South America, railway workers and sailors created early competitions. The Thai Cup, contested between Argentina and Uruguay, starting in 1900. It faded in the 1910s. Once glorious, now obscure. Each of these tournaments carried passion. Songs sung, victories cheered, tears shed. But time is slow, and memory fades. The trophies gather dust. The competitions dissolve. The names slip away. And yet, in their time, they meant everything. Even before the World Cup, there were dreams. The Sir Thomas Lipton Trophy in 1909 and 1911, sometimes called the first World Cup. Teams from Italy, Germany, Switzerland, and even a club from England played with honor, then forgotten. The Coupe de Nation in 1930 in Geneva, a grand tournament meant to rival the World Cup. Just one edition, then silence. The Mitropa Cup, once the pride of Central Europe. Hungary, Austria, Czechoslovakia, Italy, fierce battles, great players. Then war came. The cup vanished. The Copa Rio in Brazil, 1951, a global club competition, hailed as the World Championship of Clubs. For a moment, it shone. Then it slipped into history's shadows. These were cups of hope, of ambition, dreams of something greater. Some lasted only once, others for decades, but all eventually fell asleep. Today, only historians whisper their names, yet their spirit lives quietly in the Champions League, in the Copa Libertadores, in the World Cup itself. Every global competition today is built upon these forgotten dreams. And so, We leave behind the lost tournaments, the Udan Cup, the Cromwell Cup, the Thai Cup, the Sir Thomas Lipton Trophy, the Metropa Cup, the Copa Rio. Names fading, trophies dusted, but once, the heartbeat of soccer. Though forgotten, they mattered. To players, to crowds, to their time. As you drift to rest tonight, imagine a quiet trophy in a dark cabinet, tarnished silver, the faint reflection of candlelight. A prize once cherished, now resting. Like the game itself, history sleeps. And so too may you. Good night. Welcome to another gentle chapter in the sleepy history of soccer. Tonight, we will drift far from England's fields. We will follow the ball as it left its home and traveled across oceans. It traveled with sailors, with students, with soldiers, with workers. It found new homes in strange lands. It settled in ports, in railways, in dusty streets. Through empire and industry, soccer spread. Tonight, we will wander slowly across continents to see how the game moved from Britain to the world. So, close your eyes if you wish, breathe softly, and imagine the ball rolling across the seas. In the 1800s, Britain was a nation of ships. Its sailors traveled everywhere, to trade, to work, to settle, and with them, they carried a ball. In ports across Europe, sailors played on docks, in Hamburg, in Copenhagen, in Genoa. Locals watched, children joined. The game took root. In South America, British sailors arrived in Montevideo, in Buenos Aires. They played beside warehouses, near the river. Soon, railway workers joined them. Locals joined too. Clubs were born. In Asia, in Shanghai, in Hong Kong, in Calcutta, British communities played among themselves. School children watched and slowly began to play. The ball was simple, leather, stitched, heavy in the rain, but it rolled and rolled across the world. No great tournaments yet, no vast crowds, only sailors, workers, students, ordinary people. But slowly, the first foreign fields began to know soccer's touch, a quiet spreading, a seed carried by ships. Wherever railways went, so did soccer in South America. British engineers built lines across Argentina, Uruguay, Brazil, Chile. After work, they played. Railway clubs were formed. Rosario Central, Ferrocarril Oeste, others too. In Europe, factories gave rise to teams, workers in mills, in mines, in steelworks, clubs like PSV Eindhoven in the Netherlands, Schalke 04 in Germany, rooted in industry, in Africa, in Egypt. British rail workers played matches along the Nile. In South Africa, miners gathered on dusty grounds. In Ghana and Nigeria, schools taught by missionaries introduced the ball. The game was cheap. All it needed was space and a ball. And so, it spread quickly. At first, it was foreign, a British pastime, but slowly, it became local. Local songs, local styles, local clubs, the railway, the mine, the mill. Each became a birthplace of soccer. The ball rolled not only across grass, but across tracks, across factory yards, across dusty fields, always moving, always spreading. Soccer also spread through schools and through soldiers. In India, British schools taught the game. Students in Calcutta and Bombay learned. Soon they played with passion. By the 1880s, Indian clubs emerged. Mohun Bagan, Mohammedan sporting, clubs still alive today. In Africa, missionaries opened schools. Boys learned lessons, and after lessons, they played. In Nigeria, in Kenya, in the Gold Coast, the game became part of childhood. Soldiers carried it too, in barracks, in colonial outposts. On long marches, a ball was carried. At rest, soldiers played. Local people watched, sometimes joined. The empire was vast, from Canada to New Zealand, from Cairo to Cape Town, from Singapore to Sydney. Everywhere the empire went, soccer followed. At first it was a language of empire, British rules, British players, British clubs, but slowly locals claimed it, changed it, made it their own. The empire spread the ball, but once it was placed upon the ground, it belonged to everyone. As the 20th century began, the ball rolled beyond empire. It became part of national pride. In South America, Argentina, Uruguay, Brazil took the game and turned it into art, passing, dribbling, flair. By 1930, Uruguay hosted the first World Cup, a small nation, showing the world its strength through soccer. In Africa, the game grew into a symbol of independence. In Ghana, in Algeria, in Egypt, clubs were linked to movements for freedom. Soccer was no longer a colonial pastime, but a national voice. In Asia, in India, Mohun Bagan's victory over a British regiment in 1911 was seen as more than a match. It was pride. It was resistance. It was identity. Everywhere. Soccer became more than a game. It became a flag, a symbol, a uniting force. The empire had carried it, but nations made it their own. From dusty school fields to crowded streets to grand stadiums, soccer was no longer English, no longer British. It was global. And still, it spread, rolling quietly from colony to nation, from past to future. And so, we leave tonight's journey, from ships to railways, from schools to soldiers, from empire to independence. Soccer traveled far, carried by few, loved by many, claimed by all. As you drift into rest tonight, imagine a leather ball rolling slowly along a dock, across a railway line, into a schoolyard, into a field, into a stadium, rolling on, always rolling. Good night. Welcome to another quiet chapter in the sleepy history of soccer. Tonight, we will not follow the players or the clubs or even the stadiums. We will follow the ball itself, from simple bladders of air to stitched leather to shining spheres of today. The ball has changed. Slowly, quietly, it has been kicked across mud, rolled across cobblestones, floated in rain, and flown through floodlights. It is the one object, always at the center, always moving, always calling to the foot. Tonight, we will trace its story, the gentle evolution of the ball. So let your body sink deeper into rest. Let your mind follow the slow roll of the ball through time. In the beginning, the ball was not yet round. In ancient China, a game called kuju used stuffed leather skins. In Mesoamerica, rubber balls bounced between stone hoops. In medieval Europe, pig bladders, inflated and tied, were the ball of choice. They were fragile. They leaked. They tore. Children patched them with cloth. Some were wrapped in leather scraps, stitched by hand. In England's villages, these uneven balls rolled wildly, sometimes too light, sometimes too heavy. They bounced strangely, but they were enough. By the 1800s, craftsmen began shaping proper leather balls, panels cut from cowhide, stitched together. Inside, an inflated bladder. The leather was stiff. It soaked water in rain. On muddy fields, the ball grew heavy. Players headed it at their own risk. Yet it was the first true soccer ball. Round, solid, dependable. Imagine the sound. A leather ball thudding against a boot, skidding through wet grass, bouncing slowly on uneven ground. Crude, but faithful. The first form of the ball we know. By the late 19th century, the stitched leather ball had become standard. It was made of panels, usually 18 or more, brown leather, laced tightly at the top where the bladder was inserted. On dry days, it was smooth, steady, but in the rain, it absorbed water, growing heavy, slick, dangerous to head. Players often spoke of aching necks after wet matches. Still, there was something beloved about it. The smell of oiled leather, the feel beneath the boot, the sight of its seams spinning through the air. In early FA Cup finals, in the first World Cups, in matches across Europe and South America, always the same ball, brown, heavy, stitched. Children made their own versions, bundles of rags, tied with string, kicked until they fell apart. The ball was not yet perfect, but it was iconic. The leather era, the smell of history in every seam. As soccer grew, the ball changed again. In the 1950s, white balls began to appear, easier to see under floodlights, easier for spectators in the dark. In the 1960s and 70s, new designs emerged. The most famous, the black and white Telstar ball of the 1970 World Cup. Its pattern of hexagons and pentagons made it appear clearly on black and white television screens. That image became the symbol of soccer worldwide. Children drew it in notebooks. Toy balls copied its design. Materials improved too. Synthetic coatings replaced pure leather. Balls no longer absorbed water. They stayed light, even in rain. Each World Cup brought a new design. The tango in 1978, elegant lines circling its surface. The Azteca in 1986, inspired by Mexican art. The ball was no longer just an object. It was art, a symbol, a global icon. Imagine it spinning now, bright under stadium lights, rolling smooth across perfect grass, flying in slow arcs. The ball had become not only functional, but beautiful. Today, the ball is shaped by science, panels reduced, seamless designs, perfectly round, tested in wind tunnels, built for precision, the Jabalani of 2010, light, unpredictable. Some loved it, some cursed it. Goalkeepers groaned, for in its lightness, it moved strangely. Later designs grew steadier. The Brazuca of 2014, the Telstar 18 of 2018, the Al Rila of 2022, each crafted with care, bright colors, bold designs. The modern ball is tracked by sensors, its exact position measured, its weight balanced to perfection. And yet, it is still the same. A round ball, to be kicked, to be chased, to be loved, from pig bladders to polymers, from heavy leather to glowing designs, from mud to modern stadiums. The ball has rolled gently through time, always at the center, always waiting for the next touch. And so, we close tonight's journey. The ball has changed from crude bladders to stitched leather to black and white icons to modern spheres of science, but always it has been the heart of the game. As you drift to rest tonight, imagine a ball resting quietly in the center circle. No players, no crowd, just stillness. It waits, patient, silent, for the game to begin again. Good night. Welcome to the final chapter in our sleepy journey through the early history of soccer. Tonight, we will rest inside the story of togetherness, of borders crossed and teams formed, of the very first matches between nations. In the beginning, soccer was local, a village against a village, a school against a school, a town against a town. But soon, people began to wonder, what if one country could face another? What if the game could stretch beyond borders? And so, the first international matches were born, quietly at first, slowly, yet with meaning that grew greater than the game itself. Tonight, we will drift across these early encounters, from Scotland and England to South America, to Olympic fields, to the World Cup. Let the ball roll softly across invisible lines. Let the story carry you into sleep. The very first official international match was played in Glasgow in 1872, Scotland against England. The field was small, the crowd curious, only a few thousand. The players wore heavy cotton, the ball was brown leather. The match ended 0-0. No goals, no great drama. Yet history had begun. Scotland and England would play each other, year after year. A rivalry born not of anger, but of pride, of identity, of neighbors divided by history, now joined by sport. Spectators traveled long distances to watch. Songs were sung, flags waved. For many, these matches became more than sport. They became ritual. The oldest rivalry in soccer, still remembered today, began as a quiet November afternoon. A ball kicked between two nations. Simple, yet lasting. The first step in international football. From the British Isles, the idea spread outward. In the 1880s and 1890s, matches appeared across Europe. Ireland played England. Wales joined too. Then Hungary, Austria, Germany. Clubs began inviting foreign teams. A Swiss side might travel to Paris, a Dutch team to Belgium. Small crowds watched, fascinated by the mixing of styles. Slowly, governing bodies formed. Rules were standardized. Referees grew in authority. International football became more organized. By 1904, FIFA was founded. France, Belgium, Denmark, the Netherlands, Spain, Sweden, and Switzerland came together to govern the game, to imagine its future. The ball no longer belonged to one land. It belonged to all. Europe had caught the idea. Nations could meet not on battlefields, but on football fields. The first whispers of a global game were heard. Across the ocean, South America embraced international football with fire. In 1901, Argentina and Uruguay met. It was one of the first official matches outside Europe. The river between them could not divide their passion. By the 1910s and 20s, South America was alive with football. Brazil joined, Chile, Paraguay. The Copa America was born in 1916, the oldest continental tournament still played today. Matches were not calm, they were fierce. Crowds packed stadiums, flags waved, bands played. Goals were celebrated with joy that shook the stands. Yet even here, the matches meant more than goals. They were pride, they were identity, they were the sound of young nations, finding their voice through football, from Montevideo to Buenos Aires, from Rio to Santiago. The ball crossed borders like a messenger, whispering stories of rivalry, of unity, of dreams shared across lines. South America gave the international game its passion, its music, its color, its soul. By the early 20th century, international matches were no longer rare. They were expected. Soccer entered the Olympic Games in 1900. At first, a small competition. By 1924 in Paris, crowds were immense. Uruguay triumphed with grace and skill. Europe marveled. The world took notice. From these Olympic seeds grew the idea of a separate tournament, a world tournament, a cup for all nations. And so, in 1930, the first World Cup was held in Uruguay. 13 nations arrived, some by ship, some by long journeys across seas. Matches were played in Montevideo, the final Uruguay against Argentina. A stadium filled with roaring voices. Uruguay won. The hosts lifted the first World Cup. The international game had come of age. From Glasgow in 1872 to Montevideo in 1930, less than 60 years had passed. Yet the ball had rolled from a muddy field in Scotland to a global stage of millions. The dream had become real. Borders could be crossed, nations could meet, and the ball, always at the center, was the bridge. And so, we close our final journey, from the quiet rivalry of Scotland and England to the colorful stadiums of South America, to the grand stage of the first World Cup. International soccer was born. What began as local matches became a language of nations, a way to meet without war, a way to share joy and sorrow across borders. As you drift to sleep tonight, imagine the ball resting on the line between two lands, waiting to be kicked from one side to the other. A small act, yet filled with meaning. Good night.